I call the hybrid meeting to order with any remote participation operating under Mlk County's continuity of government ordinance. Like that font. Okay. So I just looked at my points, and now I have to look at everything. So we called. Are there any announcements or public comments? We have someone on Zoom who would like to.
I think first we need to. You all need to vote on the minutes from the previous meeting.
That's
yeah, that's right.
Oh.
Over here.
Oh, okay. Thank you. So I assume everybody had a chance to read the minutes from the last meeting. Do I have a motion to adopt those?
I move that we adopt the draft minutes from the previous meeting.
Second.
Second. Any discussion or revision? Then the minutes are adopted as presented from the draft. Now we're on to announcements and public comments.
Okay, and now I'll ask if there's anyone that's attending virtually that would like to make a public comment. Please use the raise hand function in Zoom now. Is there anyone here physically that would like to make a public comment? Okay. Looks like no public comment for today. Wendy.
Okay, and then we do not have trustee continuing education today. So we're right into the heart of the meeting, and my apologies, I just hold it up here. Committee appointments and reports. And first we'll turn to
David, are we live?
Yes, we are. Can you hear us, Jim?
I can hear nothing.
Oh.
Can other members of the audience hear? Ashley, can you hear us? Okay. Jim, let's type Jim. Having some tech problems today. Good, here's tech support. Tony.
Tech support, Tony.
Reboot it.
Everything's on.
I'm not sure you're seeing the chat.
I have an idea.
Oh, you've got an idea.
You go to
Wendy, do you want to go ahead with your report?
Sure. I'm just trying. My pen doesn't strike. So we will go to the technology committee report, and so we'll go to the technology chair. Wendy, yes. All right. One thing, we had our technology committee meeting last week, and after so much delay and just a little bit of confusion about it, I felt really good, and I hope that you did as well. Hearing from the new members of the team, and that was Kayla and Sarah Elizabeth, who presented an update and a general overview of where we're going with the web plan and also the technology plans moving forward. So that was very positive. And I think we're really lucky to have people with such experience and an association with libraries and the same kind of things that we do to be on board. I think we can relax a little bit. But I did send you all a copy of the presentation that I sent in case you wanted any of the details from the technology report. But basically, we're on a path to I just put that in my notes. We're on a path right now. The beta content is complete, and now for lack of my terminology, we're going to have to deal with a little bit of the technical end to get things back on the road. But Sarah Elizabeth has gone through all of the painstaking notes and details that was Catherine, right? That Catherine prepared, and so she's up to speed and now can finally start getting her own house in order, so we should say. So the that being said, the content is complete. It is the software updates and the server backups that need to be up to speed, and we're going to be working with a consultant, hopefully, so that that is a reality. Because the server obviously has to be able, before any live opening, make sure we have enough capacity and resources to back up and recover. So that being said, we have a plan to go through for the website that takes us through the summer. And so in the spring, they'll be working on all of the items, technical and also the content. And late summer is the goal for a soft launch, and with both sites, but beta will go live, and we'll get feedback from staff and clients, patrons. Then by hopefully fall and into next winter, everything should be realigned. We should get the feedback, make the adjustments, and we should be on the right target. Seems like a long time, but the website would then be operational by late fall next year. If all goes well. Now, we still have 2 outstanding positions, correct?
In IT, yes, the 2 full-time IT positions are currently being filled.
Yeah, and so that is, of course, of obstacles because they're needed in moving forward on this and the technology. At the same time, the tech committee, we decided we needed again to look at our tech plan, the one that the board approved at the beginning of the summer. That was the summary and the tech appendix to the 5-year plan that was very detailed. And we had talked about it before in terms of streamlining it and making sure we had the right priorities. And now with the input from our new directors, we can make that a little bit less, not complicated, but less complex, with a little bit of a look at the division between what our board is projecting as priorities and goals and what the tech department is doing as part of their ongoing tasks and jobs within the department, instead of it being so detailed.
I'm sorry, I didn't hear a PowerPoint. Are you talking about the main website or the catalog? I don't understand what you're talking about revamping.
The website?
So the entire website is being revamped? Okay.
Yes.
And the bare bones of it are live at beta.jmrl.org. So you can look now and see, you know, the direction that it's like.
Because I noticed that the catalog is that a beta version as well?
Yeah.
Is that a new version of the catalog?
Yeah, Find It is the internal name for it, and that has been live for a while now. I think since around at least a year or around a year. And right now we're offering parallel catalogs, the classic catalog, and likely that will stay for a while because that's something that comes from the vendor that provides our integrated line system. So the Find It is something that Catherine, our previous digital services coordinator, built using an open source package from Villanova University. And it's the way forward basically for our website, for our catalog website. And Meredith, actually, we talked about this in the tech committee meeting about how to the world, there's no difference. It's just here's the website, but it's really two different things. It's the catalog and here's the website.
Well, and I'm just assuming that this new website will be more mobile friendly.
Yes.
And that stuff. Right.
It will be mobile friendly, period.
Yes. and et cetera.
Let's check and see. Jim, can you hear us?
Yes, I figured it out. We had a big storm up here, knocked all our power out, destroyed my refrigerator, the heat pump, and some other things, and knocked out my power strips. Had to plug my speakers back in.
Good tech support.
Yeah, good times.
What did you say that you sent out?
I thought I sent
I thought I saw
to
it this
share
morning, but yeah.
Was it this
I
morning? Oh, I
shared
didn't go hop on back.
the technology report they gave to us at our meeting, and I just put it on here.
Oh, was that this morning?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I didn't
Okay,
go on either.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. Yeah, no, I shared it on the say, gosh, my technology didn't work either.
Now, the technology plan that Wendy's referring to is an addendum to our 5-year plan. So that's up on the front of our board. You can get to it from the front of our webpage and review it.
Great. Yeah, and after today and before our next meeting, I'll send that out just so in case you have suggestions or ideas. In that timeline is on here, but if we go to our technology plan update, which is the second item that we focused on, webpage being front and center, and the technology plan. And Kayla has gone through the priorities that she inherited in the position and had set up priorities for herself. So working on the lockers and in fact, just continuing what was started before. Okay. The employee hours tracking service. Okay. She's going to, will be implemented or is evaluating the hotspots that we put in before. We have a different type of hotspot, so there'll be some evaluation of that, and as they go out and are used, which they will be. And then we've got the virtualization of the PCs we've been talking about. She'll be and is working on, hope to complete. And the feedback, she'll be working with Sarah Elizabeth on the feedback for the website as that moves forward. And digital hybrid meetings. The same tasks and implementations that we talked about and have been started. So I think we're on the right track. The tech committee has decided that we will meet February at the earliest and address issues within the tech committee about the long-term plan, the tech plan and the 5-year plan. We'll take a look at some of that, and then we'll get reports and assessments about the website so we can keep up to date on that. And in the meantime, between now and then, the technology staff is going to look at some of the same issues that we'll be bringing up on the technology plan, and they will bring that when we meet in February, hopefully. So we have a timeline. We have the priorities are still in place, and everything will move forward as planned, providing, and I know this is technology, but providing everyone falls in place. We get the employees, we get the server, the operational hardware that we need, and we'll move on. Any questions, or and also anything that you would like to add?
Not
Getting into
yeah, just to iterate or clarify what you're talking about, the technology plan right now is this very detailed checklist, stuff that staff are doing. And the idea is to look at turning that into a higher level list of priorities from a board standpoint. The detailed implementation checklist would still be part of the organization, but it would be more of an operational activity. So it kind of goes, but it does go hand in hand with what we're already doing. But the idea would be to bring that to give the board an opportunity. And this is something we already have dealt with. It's such a long list that it's hard to kind of get the big pattern out of it. So the opportunity for the board would be, what do we want to make sure as a board that we're focusing on from our, or emphasizing as far as our technical services, and then let that feed into what they're doing day to day, and make sure this part of it happens this year. And because it's really ambitious, if there are parts that need to slide, here would be things that aren't prioritized necessarily.
And I think that I'm really pleased that that Wendy has asked basically the technology committee to be a more active committee than it has been in the past. It was usually just used, to review that annually, the technology plan. We're going to make it more of a working board staff committee, so that hopefully every few months get together and be able to share progress, so that the board is aware of where staff are going and that the staff are aware of what the board's priorities are.
Any questions? Anybody on Zoom? If not, we'll move right on to the just completed policy committee report.
Okay, so the policy committee met today to continue its remit of reviewing policies that are up for review. We started by kind of pointing out that there are a couple of policies that are up for review this year or next year that we are choosing to defer review for maybe a couple of months in favor of a kind of a bigger picture reorganization project that we've had kind of in mind for a couple of years. And the idea would be, we have a policy manual today. We're talking about trying to regroup or reorganize so it's a more logical flow and gets, in particular, the public what they need to know up front. And then other supporting documents like a regional agreement and so forth are going to be shifted to the end as appendices. As part of that, there are a few, in particular, employee-related policies that don't need to really be upfront for the public. And so the reason we're going in the order we are is because this was one of the motivations for the employee handbook project, is to put those sorts of things in place as an operational document where we can tell the employees what they need to know. And then as part of a reorg, we're going to look at some of these and probably end up recommending to the full board that we just deprecate parking policy for employees as a board level policy, take it out of there. But now that we have the employee manual, we'll be able to show you, well, here's where it is covered as an internal level document. So just a high level kind of heads up for the committee and the board. This again is something we really have talked about for a couple of years, but again, the handbook was part of that. We had to get that in place first so that we can then be able to have a home for some of these things that don't necessarily need to be public facing. So more on that as over the next probably year, really. Okay, then we rolled up our sleeves on the interlibrary loan policy. And I think we're not ready to show it as a reading this month, but we do have it in a pretty good shape where we needed to research one or two items. If those don't turn up anything that needs to be tweaked, then we'll be able to have a first reading for that on at the board's next meeting, the January meeting, because the committee was otherwise ready to recommend. This is a policy that tells the public what they need to know about the availability and how do you use interlibrary loans. So we'll talk about that more. You'll see the details next month. One thing I want to point out or one thing that came up, and it's not necessarily a policy committee topic, we participate so interlibrary loan is loaning back and forth materials with and from other libraries. We do benefit from receiving materials from other libraries because there's a service, and maybe David will decide how much of the weeds to get into, but there's something called OCLC that is sort of the master catalog or a master catalog for availability. I think we subscribe to a sort of a read-only portion of that. We pay a fee, and that's how we are able to access materials from other libraries. But we also, it came up as part of our discussion, have chosen over time not to invest resources, and I think they could be substantial, in listing our holdings for other libraries to request from us. So we do get some requests, and we do loan some out, was my understanding, as a result of direct requests, but not as a result of a broader participation in terms of making our materials available through OCLC. So I'm bringing it up at this meeting. Basically, the committee had no reason to, it's a conceptual question. It's a conceptual and budget trade-off. Do we want to invest our funds and staff time, which goes back to funding, in making our catalog or our materials more widely available? The committee, I don't think, really wrestled with that very much because we weren't looking at budgets and so forth. I'm just bringing it up to but also, in my opinion, we don't have a framework for when that conceptual decision would be revisited by who and when. You know, it's because it's not a policy per se. Other policies would say, well, every 10 years we're going to look at this and talk about it. So I don't have a specific recommendation right now, but I did think it was the right thing to do to make the board aware that there's this conceptual decision that we operate under. And if anyone was interested in proposing doing something different or proposing a framework for how and when we would review that conceptual decision, I'm just sharing that knowledge with, you know, something I learned today with everyone else.
And that would be an option anywhere down the road.
Yeah, we should always
need be, you know, so
yeah, I think if someone were to advocate, they would say
consider there's nothing that pivots that. So
correct. Yes.
Yeah. So
true.
obviously,
yeah,
the decision to enter into the library loan with our collection is something that they could do at any time as they see.
We as an organization could do it any time. It's kind of unclear to me who would make that decision and when, and because it's a conceptual. There could be conceptual arguments why it would be a good idea, and there could be conceptual arguments, you know, partly based on practicality of why it's not a useful investment of our resources. So,
I think that would come from director's observation.
Possibly.
And it's always been a staff decision, and largely it's been driven by our technical services department, because the big other thing, besides having our catalog listed for the rest of the world in WorldCats, which you probably have seen looking for items in the past, it comes with the catalog records for new materials. So you get the OCLC cataloging in. So right now we have other resources for getting cataloging in. So we get a new item and we can look at what other examples of cataloging are. Well, OCLC is the top. It's the 900-pound gorilla of cataloging too. So that's the thing that has often driven staff to look into it. And it's just been a matter of really of the cost of it. Now there are other costs associated, because once our catalog is available online, you don't have to say yes to every request that comes in, but you start to get a lot of requests, and it takes somebody time.
Some percentage of our, and also some percentage of our collection would not be available. So again, my goal was not to really roll up our sleeves and make that decision now, but I thought it would be appropriate for everyone to know that there's a conceptual status quo that's in place. And again, in my mind, there's not a framework for the board to be involved in that, even though I think some of these conceptual type things could be conceivably a board value or priority.
I think the board definitely should be aware that we are not participating in something that a lot of other libraries are and have never participated.
So that's the purpose, the goal of communicating that has been accomplished, and certainly we'll have any questions. Then we started an initial review of our website policy, and we just got so far as to, this is one where that's very detailed right now, and I think sort of the consensus was we can translate a lot of the line by line pieces of that are really operationally oriented, turn it into more of a statement of guidelines and principles and purposes, what the purpose of the website, and then what are the sort of the guidelines on a governance level the staff need to fall within in terms of operating a website. But that's the direction we're going to go. So I think that will end up going. We just had done, the committee members had done some homework looking at comparable policies and trying to distill down some bullet points or goals or functionally that we needed our website policy to accomplish. So we'll move eventually to some wording that you'll see down the road, but that's sort of just what we did today in terms of progress. Okay, any questions, comments, thoughts about anything I've mentioned today? All right, thank you.
New business. So we move on to the old business, and back to you, Mike, with your policy.
Okay. So the following two policies, we did have if I recall correctly, an initial reading at the last board meeting. We're ready to bring them to a vote for potential update by the board today. So we're going to go up. Okay, we're doing your presentation. Okay. So this one we had explained kind of a 3 or 4 passes, and that's where you see the different colors. But and I don't want to review everything we pointed out last month, but generally the big changes here, we've defined a group as generally 5 or more people, and we're really trying to focus on if we need dedicated services, if your group is going to need dedicated services, we're asking that you let us know in advance. That's kind of and then also that we may need to manage our own availability, so we're not always going to be able to accommodate every group all at once. So the big changes are this defining a group. It used to say 10. Yeah, you say 10. We've sort of redefined it as 5. But again, but at the same time, clarify that it's if you require dedicated service. So a family at a normal visit to where they're browsing, a larger family of 5 or more wouldn't apply because they're not asking for a specific tour in advance or anything like that. So the two changes were 10 to 5, and then a requirement for the form to be more of a request.
So the brown version is the cleaned up final.
Very calming.
Yes.
Vote for me.
Okay. Anybody have any questions for Mike? And time to read the.
Oh, you want to? So I would entertain a motion to.
And this was read last month.
Right, yeah. I remember all of the points. So do I have a motion that we accept the revised policy number 4.231?
I move to vote for the revised policy as the number you just mentioned.
Oh, 4.231.
That's the one, 4.231. That's the one. It's the tip of my tongue.
I'll second.
That's the one I move.
Okay. I have a second. Any discussion or revisions? All those in favor?
Aye.
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 All those opposed? The motion carries. And it's completed.
Thank you. Thank you so much to the committees for all of this work. I know it's a lot of work, so thank you all for doing this. And thank you, Mike, for your leadership there. Thank you.
Well, it's for people who love tweaking words and perfecting things. So some of us enjoy it.
Oh, good. Well, you have one more.
Yeah,
You have. Let's go to your next 5.2.
Okay, so emergencies also we read last
Yes.
month, and it just lays out some high-level goals or priorities for third emergency. But then what's new, this was already implied, but we're sort of at a governance level, kind of covering the base from a governance due diligence standpoint. Hey, administration, we want you to make sure you have a plan and that in place. I mean, we already did, but we're covering the base again. That we make sure that administration understands that would be a board priority to make sure that that gets accomplished. Okay, so I'll be open for questions, discussions, or motion on this.
Anybody questions? Anybody like to make a motion to approve policy section 5.2 emergencies?
I move to accept the new policy in JMRL section 5.2 as read.
Thank you. Second?
Second.
Well, I think to be clear, so Lisa, you're moving that the board adopt this policy?
Yes, I am.
Perfect. Thank you.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries, and that policy section 5.2 has been adopted. Okay, old business. Oh, David, you are up.
Okay, thank you, Andy, for taking over as chair at the last minute today. I'm sure Thomas appreciates that. I think he intended that this would be a shorter meeting because it is 2 weeks early. We just met, your group just met 2 weeks ago. So unfortunately, I've got a lot of directors reporters. So for those of you hoping to get out early, I apologize. Just very important information to keep you all up to date on so that you can share with the public. So the JMRL food drive this year finished up and ended up collecting a record 1,425 pounds, which is far and away the most that we have ever collected for this service. And the food bank alerts us that this will help provide 1,188 meals to families in our community. So this is a Foods for Fines drive that now we have done annually. We had skipped last year, so we're glad to get back in the saddle, and people were very supportive of the program. A couple programs that JMRL has been involved in that you might have seen in the news. Albemarle County hosted a community read. This is the second community read that their Office of Equity and Inclusion has put forward. JMRL distributed copies of their racial covenants, the continuing legacy of exclusionary housing practices in Albemarle County. That was in partnership with the Office of Equity and Inclusion. That ongoing event was capped by a program last Thursday night, which is available for viewing on Albemarle County's Facebook page. So it was a county program, but they worked with the library to distribute the materials. The materials were printed in-house. It wasn't something that they bought. So it is largely still available on a digital version, although we did add a couple collections to the, I think one for our reference at the Central Library, if anyone is interested in seeing it. It's also available to either read online or print. And the second one is that for the second year in a row, JMRL is going to partner with UVA's Office of Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion in their annual Mlk Celebration community read. This is the second year of doing this. This is another book by Dr. King. The title this year, or in 2022, I should say, is Why We Can't Wait. So sometime this week, JMRL should have free copies to distribute at the Charlottesville area branches in Crozet. It's a very limited supply this year. So it's first come, first served. This is external to our circulation system. It's just, we'll put some flyers up. The UVA will put some flyers up and people can come and ask for them. The UVA reading program is going to culminate in a virtual panel discussion on January 20th at 6 p.m. So just so you're aware, this is kind of partnership that we're doing to promote reading in the community, but the materials are not coming from JMRL.
In the past, have we only done this during the pandemic?
These two particular ones started during the pandemic. So last year for the Albemarle one, we did the Our Story, the Monacan Nation.
Right.
And for the university, they did another Dr. King book.
And are we anticipating in the future these are going to then be live again?
The panel discussions that they did, I'm not sure. That's kind of outside our organizational decision.
Yeah, because you're just pairing with them.
Right.
But I would, this is just a suggestion. If ever there was a time when, like with the Monacan thing, where it's broader than just Charlottesville or Albemarle housing, whatever, could we try to move some of these if they come live to the branches?
Yeah, certainly. Like you're talking about having a program there. Yeah, and I think that some of
if you're pairing with someone like that, that
right.
is something that is not just specific Charlottesville, but regional. Right. If they get not virtual, maybe it would be nice to, you know,
yeah, I think that they're going to face the same issues that everybody is. Like when the pandemic is over, are these going to continue to be virtual, or they can reach kind of a broad audience in a lot of different places, or will they try to hold them physically, or some combination of the two? So it would be something like this. So I don't know. I don't think that they've started discussing that for next year quite yet. But certainly, yeah, if JMRL were to be partnering with them in the sense of a venue, we could offer any of our locations. I think the first MLK one they were thinking about doing initially at a larger, they were thinking it was going to be a very big event, but then it ended up being virtual last year. Okay, so speaking of restrictions and COVID data, unfortunately the data in the area hit a milestone that the staff PPC had pegged, meaning a change in masking policies. So data is not out today for last week, but last Monday, data came out for the week of 11/28 through 12/4 that 3 of 5 JMRL jurisdictions posted a percent positivity greater than 10%, with Greene at 16.6, Louisa at 13.7, and Nelson at 12.7. That means that JMRL has posted signage requiring masking for the public. New data is not out for this week yet, but we're predicting it will remain above the threshold. It should be out today. It wasn't right before this meeting. So our protocol is that masking will remain in place until 2 consecutive weeks of percent positivity and at least 4 of the 5 jurisdictions being under 10%, which is what the health department has pegged as widespread, uncontrolled community spread. Hopefully this will happen within the next few weeks, but things are not trending in the right direction. EPC had an emergency session and informed staff of this change, which began last Wednesday. So this is a rather large change that had happened this week. I mentioned in October that the metric had changed from a percent positivity average of all 5 jurisdictions to at least 2 of the 5 being over 10%. And this is the first time that that has affected procedures. So you will notice signage around the library. Staff have been instructed to not engage on masking issues, to help people with their library business either way, but that the rule as stated says masks required. Questions?
David, I'll wait.
Okay.
Okay.
So if someone comes in, they're not to even say masks are required.
It's fine to say masks are required and to offer a mask. JMRL has plenty of masks to offer to the public. But basically any follow-up conversation about that should focus on what the person's library business is and helping them to accomplish that. Does that answer your question? Yes. And then Lisa?
That was also my question, but I also wonder, I don't think I'm very satisfied with that answer. Like, I don't understand if you offer them a mask and they refuse to put it on, are you meant to continue with their library business as planned? Which in that case makes it seem like masks really aren't required.
Well, Lisa, it's a tightrope. As AJ has told me repeatedly, it's a poison either way, basically, in the decision making. So library staff have been informed that they are to assist them regardless of whether or not they are wearing a mask. Masks are required, but we really don't have much authority to enforce that. We are going to attempt the best that we can to convince people to wear masks in the library, but if somebody refuses to, then the staff don't have much recourse there.
That feels very unfair, and it feels unsafe in a variety of ways, like unsafe by exposing library workers to people who don't believe in science and could kill you with stupidity. But in addition, it does seem like it is, I don't know, it just feels like I see the rope that you are on. I see it's a very thin margin to walk along. You don't want to get into violating somebody's rights, et cetera, et cetera. But I'm concerned about a library staff person being in an altercation with a patron or feeling like, despite their own discomfort and legitimate concerns, having to work with someone regardless. And so I didn't know if there were people, if there was a way to work it so that if there were other library employees who felt like, oh, well, I'm vaccinated, I don't care, it'll be fine, I will work with the person who is. But the idea that, I don't know, it just feels like it's helping us move backwards rather than forwards. You know what I'm saying? Like, because this could be spreading things, who's to say?
Yeah, I think that my response to that would be that this is a step backwards. That data is moving backwards. So in a lot of ways. So I hear exactly what you're saying there. EPC is meeting tomorrow, Lisa, and I can bring that feedback back and we can discuss some more. But yeah, I don't want to say darned if you do, darned if you don't.
Yeah, I suppose. Yeah, I think I'm just confused about that as a policy. Masks are required. If you don't have a mask, they will give you a mask. But if you don't want to wear a mask because you don't believe in it, despite the requirement, things will proceed for you exactly as they would for anybody else who followed the rule. Like, that's the thing that I'm having a hard time reconciling. Like, either make it a rule or don't. But it's
right.
And the goal is to avoid staff having to get into an ideological confrontation with members of the public, and to avoid the potential dangers of that situation. So it's weighing those two sets of dangers, basically.
And I just feel really badly about, and seriously about the prospect of a library employee getting sick because of a patron who did not believe the rules should apply to them. That feels unfair to me. And so that's the concern that I'm operating from, as well as I also reject the belief that wearing a mask in a pandemic is an ideological choice. So I don't know, I'm concerned.
Thank you.
What recourse do staff members have if someone breaks a different rule?
Well, normally it would be to call the supervisor on duty. The supervisor on duty would explain the rule to the person. If the person refused to follow the rule, we would ask them to leave the library premises without any other follow-up to that, being like, why don't you leave for the day today, come back and try again tomorrow. Mm-hmm. If there were further breaking of the rules, it would either mean, staff would document that with our own incident report. It would either mean, perpetual, usually 3 times breaking of a rule would mean potential loss of library services, meaning you can't come back into the buildings for a while, escalating all the way up, depending on the situation, to call in the authorities, which is not an option in this case.
Of course. No, I appreciate that question. I really appreciate that question. Thank you for asking it. Like, what other rules are people just like allowed to break? And it doesn't seem like there's that many. And this feels really serious to me. So I'd be very curious, David, to see how this pans out. Because I've recently traveled. I was on a plane to Texas of all places. And when I
remote today.
That plane was jam-packed and everybody on it had a mask on their nose and mouth, everybody, just for the 3-hour flight or whatever. Now, when I landed in Texas, it's cured, COVID is cured in Texas. Nobody ever wears masks anywhere. But on the plane, if they wanted to get where they were going, they put a mask on and nobody argued. And so, I mean, I know we are not an airline, thank goodness. Because we're way better than an airline. But I don't know, I am concerned about, the numbers are creeping back up. And this idea that we can, I don't know. I know I don't want to overstate. Well, I don't think I can overstate how concerned I am about this, but I just wanted it to be noted. that I was concerned about employee safety. That is the as well as the library in general. You know, if you really want to pick up your book, put a mask on and get it. And if you can't wear a mask, I'm sure there's a library person that will walk it out to you to pick it up. I don't know. It just seems that people will put on masks when it means that if there's something they really want to do, they will. And so I'm hoping that there won't be among the library patron, among our community, that there wouldn't be such resistance. But I don't know. I could be. Every jurisdiction is different, and I don't know how everybody works. But I just want to put that out there on the record that this should not be a topic up for debate if we have made it a rule. That's what rules are for, is to minimize debate. So.
Yeah, this is a lot of what the discussion at the EPC has been about, Lisa. So I appreciate your input here, and I'll certainly take it back to that group, and then we will move forward here. You know, we had hoped that it was a post-Thanksgiving blip, but as you said, the data doesn't appear to be moving the right direction right now.
Well, I mean, I guess the alternative is that you shut it again and only have curbside if people can't.
Our stated goal, or my stated goal, is not to close the library's doors. That we would be able to, barring some unforeseen disasters, we would be able to offer service throughout the pandemic. I think we have learned enough in the last almost 2 years to be able to do that.
Yeah. Other measures, safety measures.
Yes, exactly. So going, you know, if we had to go back to some sort of appointment service. And that was the last time, Lisa, that masks were required when it was one-on-one appointments.
Yes.
That was a bit easier to manage because that had to be arranged in advance. So that discussion happened on the phone before somebody came in.
Amen. I really appreciate the way that you are working really hard to provide as full and holistic and uncompromised service as possible. I think that lots of people are working on that, but I think you are doing a wonderful job of it, David. And I just would not want it to be compromised, that we end up, you know, I just feel like if people can comply with the rules as they are allegedly intended for health, and this is a way to keep the doors open. If you wear a mask when you're in the library, it makes it easier for us to offer in-person service. If you won't wear a mask, it just makes that much more difficult. And I don't know, it just seems like the alternative between having an open library and wearing a mask would mean I would want to wear a mask so I could go into the library that was open.
Maybe a public service announcement from Lisa would be great.
I'm not allowed to do public service announcements because I have a lot of rage. And once I start, it's off-putting to others. So I would have to leave that to somebody who had a bit more modulation. But I would absolutely support maybe David. David is excellent at modulation, doing such an announcement.
I think you're discounting my rage here, Lisa.
Well, if you did an announcement, could you say that if you don't want to comply, we will offer you services in the parking lot? You could
look at changing our signs for that, because we are offering curbside service at every location.
Yes.
No, we always have. You have from the get-go, even when it was open.
Well, let me take all this back to EPC, and certainly there's no louder voices in the library system than the library board, Lisa. So we will continue to discuss and tweak and move forward. This decisions of this level since summer of 2020 have largely been left to me to figure out. And I can't thank the staff that are on the Emergency Planning Commission enough for their work and providing a sounding board for that. And we have so far navigated this, I think, about as well as we can. We were shut when we had to be shut. We were open as soon as we could open. We have managed to have very, very few cases on staff. We got our staff vaccinated in the first group of essential workers. Boosters were available as soon as boosters were available. PPE and distancing was there in place as while we needed it. So I feel like we have done everything right, but that doesn't mean that we can't second guess decisions and go back and look and make sure that we're still doing what's right.
I agree.
David, I'm sorry.
Kathy, go ahead.
Okay, David, I agree with what Lisa said. I agree with what you've said. And I want to commend you for taking on the responsibility. I know it's part of your job and we got your back. Okay, so try to work as best you can because there's no right answer.
Thank you, Kathy.
And I also wanted to just add, I had a friend who posted on Facebook the other day how grateful she was for the rapid tests that the library offers. And again, that's a really, I just feel like as a community organization, David, that you absolutely are doing a great job of navigating this, and you have been able to be responsive. And I just want to, I guess maybe one of the questions I had, and I'm not sure this is something you can answer, but have there been cases among our jurisdictions where patrons refused to wear masks, or there was a conflict, or there was, you know, I know that rules exist to prevent certain behaviors, but sometimes they're designed after the problem has already happened. And so I didn't know if maybe I'm worried about something that's just not a big deal, but I am thinking about the safety of the library staff and the other patrons there, and trying to keep the library open and as COVID-free as possible.
That's the goal.
Has there been pushback? Have you heard reports from supervisors or from patrons about feeling like this has been a challenge to get people to wear masks inside the library?
Yeah, certainly we've had individuals unhappy with any masking requirements we've had in the past. We've had individuals unhappy with recommended masking, which is where we were until last Wednesday, basically. A signage said wear a mask in the library. Yeah, I have fielded numerous complaints. Branch managers and staff at various locations have fielded complaints from members of the public that don't agree with those rules.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, thank you all. That's invaluable feedback, and I'm glad that we had a chance to talk through it and hear a little bit. And you know, as I said, all this will be discussed ad nauseum, and apparently for the next 10 years. Lisa mentioned the Covet tests. Just to give you some feedback there, that JMRL has distributed 1,895 of them since the day before Thanksgiving. We have several thousand more ready to distribute for the rest of December. So help spread the word however you can, because the ones that we have expire at the end of December. So we'll get new ones from the state. We're all assuming that this is a very popular program and it's moving forward, that will expire into 2022. But the ones that we currently have are only good for the next few weeks. So I have no doubt that we will get rid of the 2,000 that we have currently in my office, but anything you can do to spread the word would be great. Just a few other things, Wendy. I wanted to make mention, I mentioned this at the technology committee, that JMRL is going to be using a new technology being provided by the state. It's something that we've been interested in for a long time. It's called Beanstack. It's a software and an app, very popular amongst public libraries, that helps to track reading programs like the summer reading program. So if you remember the summer reading program where you would write down the books that children read and they would turn it in for a prize, this is a virtual version of that, but it allows us to open that up a little bit more so that we can do multiple challenges throughout the year. We've got a winter summer reading program that's coming back this year, launching in the new year, where we're going to soft launch Beanstack too as a way to kind of parallel track your reading there. We're assuming it's going to go well, and it's going to allow for other reading challenges. We're looking forward to adding the 1,000 Books Before Kindergarten challenge after the summer reading winter launch. I'm sorry, the winter reading launch, and various other challenges that can just be spun up very easily rather than the huge summer reading push that it takes. That doesn't mean it's going to replace the turn-in sheets type thing for those families that are more interested in that. It just means it will supplement it and allow us to do more versions of it throughout the year. Wendy.
David, is it just the accumulation of the information, or is it a promotional software?
It's what they call badgification. So you set little goals in it. It's like, oh, read 10 books, read 20 books, read a mystery, read this. And then every time you log on and say, I did this or did that, you get a new thing, a new virtual thing. So it's basically like a gold star. You know, you would get like a good job, Wendy, you passed this challenge, you've got this, and you would collect that in your Beanstack app and you would show off to everybody, you know, what a great JMRL reading challenge.
So everybody would have their own Beanstack?
Yes, you would get your own accounts, basically.
Okay.
So a lot of details to be worked out, and this is just a soft launch into the winter reading. We're not going to do a bunch of press or promotion for it. This is a way to work out some of the kinks before summer reading gets here, which is a much bigger program for public libraries. The state library is preparing some training coming up from a Richmond law firm on social media, which I know some board members might be interested in because they're preparing 3 versions. At least one session is for stakeholders, and that includes board members and elected officials. As soon as I get more information about that, which I'm expecting in the next few days, I'll send it around to the board. There's one for kind of employers, employees, and then stakeholders. So I'll share that with all staff as well. Right before we got here, AJ took delivery of the historic highway marker commemorating the Swanson versus UVA case. It turns out that those are hundreds of pounds. It is too big. And 18-wheeler tried to bring it down to Central and ended up having to park on Market Street, couldn't get around the bike rack or some such. So yes, it is here, but likely we will need some coordination before we can get it in the ground. It is a full-on state certified highway marker that will be outside the Central Library. We'd like to coordinate with the city and the county and then potentially the law school at the university to have some sort of event to commemorate putting it in the ground. I don't know what you do for signs. But we could have a few people say some words.
Put it in.
Yeah, we can ask them to put it in our
Sign
work.
raising.
So I'm very excited about this this commemoration. We just have some details to work out before it actually gets into the ground, but it is here. So it was successfully accepted by the state. A lot of the work there was from Josh Howard, our former collection and technology manager. So we'll certainly invite folks that worked on it too. And finally, last thing I have, JMRL hosted an online event last Thursday, which was a showing of Lorenzo Dickerson's Free and Open to the Public, starring Kathy Johnson-Harris for part of it. A few other folks that you might recognize were in it. Lorenzo allowed this online version of this event to be taped, so the film and the discussion following with Lorenzo and Tom Chapman from the Albemarle Charlottesville Historical Society and myself are available to view online now at JMRL's YouTube page. So if you didn't get a chance to see this movie, which is about an hour long about the history of library service in the region, it's available to stream from JMRL's YouTube page. There's also a DVD copy in each branch library if you prefer that. That is all the information I have to present.
Well, thank you very much, Dave.
Thank you.
And we'll read on to other matters. The other matters from, oh, yeah.
I also have another matter. So it is JMRL procedure that the library board needs to approve grants that the library staff have applied for. And generally I try to get that as an agenda item for you all to vote on and have some concept that it's coming or whatnot. But I got word this morning that JMRL staff had applied for and gotten a grant since your last meeting, basically. So I'm going to throw out the information to you. If the board is open to it, a vote on this today would be great because it would allow this program to move forward. If not, we can put it on the agenda for January to talk about it some more. It's an IMLS, Institute for Museum and Library Services grant that's being distributed by the University of Washington School of Information. And it's called Misinformation Escape Room. And the library would effectively host 6 sessions of an escape room for teens and adults, all virtually. And the idea here is to educate people about information credibility. And they're focusing on, in social media, the role of social media bots, deep fakes, and misleading physical information, charts, things like that, misleading charts. So this grant comes with a $500 stipend to JMRL, basically, which we would largely use to potentially advertise the events, but likely to add items to the collection that would be about this subject matter, about misinformation and social media. The discussion for the board is, whether or not to accept this grant, basically, and whether or not we can do that today. If so, we would need a motion accepting this grant. If not, then it could go on the agenda for January.
And Is there a designated library?
It's virtual.
Oh, it's all virtual.
All
We
6
did
sessions
them.
are virtual.
We did them in the room.
Yeah, escape. Well, when I think of escape room, I think of a room.
Yeah,
but somehow it's virtual.
Oh wow.
Yes.
You have to
So
escape from the Zoom call.
I'm sorry.
You have to escape from the Zoom call. You have to find the button that says leave.
So I'm, because of the small amount of funding here, I'm assuming that the board would not, it's not like the money is breaking the bank here. It's just that our procedure in place in order to tell our auditors later, here's where the money came from. It has to be accepted by the library board. So the question is whether or not you all would need time to think about it and more information, or you would going to vote today on accepting this. The deadline for the grant is that the programming has to be done by March.
Oh, and
end of March.
And so the money's available, but the librarians here have to create?
Nope, it comes as a package.
Okay.
Here it is, 6 sessions ready to go.
Okay. And then they just have to implement the programming.
Yeah, so maybe some discussion about whether or not we could vote, or you all, I'm sorry.
I was gonna say, I think it sounds really timely and something that's really needed, especially as teenagers are more and more on social media and aren't sure what's,
Yeah, what would the objections be?
Well, so from a process standpoint, I'm generally in favor of transparency for the public, that especially if we're voting on something, generally my preference would be the public has an opportunity to see that we're voting on something, which opens up the door for them to
object or
to have to
get out of the room.
No, to get out of the room. No, but I think the opposite would to participate in the public comment and say, you're going to vote on this. I have an opinion. In this case, it's such a minor thing that I don't have that concern, but I want to reiterate, I think, my interest in that concept generally. But that would be the.
I think I share that same.
Yes.
If the board is if the library is going to do something, we want to make sure the public has a chance to weigh in.
Yeah, that would be the. And but David, just to confirm, for the requirement to the board to approve acceptance of grants, there's no minimum threshold. If it's $1, we got to bring it up and vote on it.
This was something that something that came out of JMRL working with the city of Charlottesville on how to handle incoming funds from grants, and at the time there was no minimum threshold. Now that's something that we could go back and revisit and see if that has changed, but our own policy, it's any grant. But that would be wonderful if it was like under $1,000.
yeah, I think under $1,000.
Yeah.
Like
yes.
And then we wouldn't be in a situation like this. It would just be like, yeah, staff is programming and doing this thing.
Right. Yeah, but we are.
I can check on that.
So in light of what you all said, I do think it's good to maintain the same consideration.
Same process.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, so will it give them enough time if the approval doesn't come to February?
I think so. I think that the problem would be, there are 6 sessions that have to be done online, and whether or not they could start kind of advertising that, like putting it out in our thing to say sign up for. It would make it a very tight window, I think. But this is just one of those stars that are not quite aligned here.
Yeah, so again, I was not objecting to voting today in this instance. It's just, again, because of the small
I know it's
impact of all,
I move that we accept the $500 grant as a board.
Kathy's moved. Is there a second?
I second.
Meredith, second. Any other comments or considerations? Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 All those opposed? Motion carries, and that way you get started.
Okay, great. I'm sure the rest of
Thank you. I think that's fantastic. The other new matters, David.
I'm all done. Thank you.
Are you sure? Wait, future agenda items. Would you like to add?
I do have some.
I thought so.
Future agenda items.
So So we're back on regular schedule, fourth Monday in January. By then, staff and some trustees will have met with some of the outlying jurisdictions about budget, so there'll be a budget update.
So we'll have budget update.
And then potential
vote on policy 4.32 interlibrary loan.
Interlibrary loan.
Will be a potential
First reading, yeah, potential first reading.
Reading and
Yeah.
you're gonna wordsmith, right? Anything else we forgot to give to agenda? And before we take a motion to adjourn, I forgot to say this at the beginning, but we've had so much more publicity. Either that or I'm paying attention. But Facebook, lots coming out. I knew about, I usually secondhand, but I knew about a lot of the programs and news carried. So I really appreciate that. That's something we desperately need to get more involved out and about. Okay, does anybody else have any objections to ending the meeting? Could I entertain a proposal for adjournment?
I want to stay here forever.
We'll be in that locked room.
I move that we adjourn the meeting.
Is there a second?
I second.
All in favor? Aye. All in favor?
Aye.
Still vote. Any objections? Okay, the meeting is adjourned.
Thank you.
all.
See you next
Thank you all
year.
and happy holidays.
Thank you so much, everybody. Stay safe
Next year.
Bye all.
Happy holidays, everybody.
Bye, Jim.
And I think Wendy deserves a gold star for
Yeah.
Yeah.
Pressed in at the last, like literally the last minute. So great job.
Add it to your trustee Beanstack.